gave a parable in the teaching and the telling of it. And he did so in response to a question that Peter asked the Lord. Now, Peter gets a bad name, I think, sometimes. I should say maybe a bad rap. Because often we see in the scripture different passages, things he said, things he did. And we get a picture that Peter was a little bit impulsive sometimes. And I've heard him portrayed as a hothead and this and that. I don't know that all those portrayals are exactly correct. But in this particular passage, Matthew chapter 18, it spans from verse 23 to 35. We're not going to read all the verses today, but in verse 21, Peter asks a question. And I'm not sure what the motivation was for the question. But it says, then Peter came to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? So I have heard this preached many times in my life. I've heard it in Bible studies. I've heard it in Sunday school lessons. The impression might be that Peter was feeling a little exasperated with someone and was trying to find out, when can I actually be mad at them? But I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think he was asking specifically and thinking the answer would be 7 times, but I could be wrong. But Jesus says in verse 22, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. And then he starts this parable. Now, we're not going to read the whole thing, but I will summarize it for you. In this parable, and I would encourage you to read it when you have time. Really, the whole 18th chapter is, of course, the whole Bible is good, but in respect to this message, the whole 18th chapter is really good. In this parable, there's a man that owes a great financial debt. And you're going to get a picture of how great it is. I did a little research, and I don't know. I have done research on this over the years, and I've seen different things. So this one seemed the most fantastic. And so intentionally I'm using this because I want to emphasize the point that this guy his debt was not even payable. He's never going to be able to be through with this debt. He owes 10,000 talents, is what it says, and we are to assume it's talents of gold. A talent, according to this one source that I read a couple of weeks ago, 1 talent. Now he owes 10,000, right? 1 talent in that day was the equivalent of about 20 years of a day laborer's wages. 20 years worth. And he owes 10,000 of these. I don't know how he got in that spot, but there he was. And he gets called before the king. That's who he owes the money to. And the king's saying, pay up. Time's up. Whatever arrangement had been made before, it's time to pay. And he can't. And he is in a bad spot. And the king orders that he, his wife, his children, and everything that he owns are to be sold. And whatever that is, then that's what the king will accept for that debt. That's serious. That's rotten. And the man falls down before the king and he's begging for mercy. And he says, I find it interesting in the New King James, It's worded this way: have patience with me. He's saying in our modern language, give me a little more time. Give me more time to pay this off. And I'll pay you everything, he says. But give me a little more have patience with me and I will pay it all. This is a not even payable debt. He's never going to be able to cover this debt. But he's begging. And the king is moved with compassion. He releases the man and completely forgives the debt. What? Yeah. Completely forgives the debt. Because he had mercy. Now, did this guy deserve it? No. Did this man do anything to earn this forgiveness? No. Did he do anything to earn the king to even consider waiving this debt? Did he ask the king to waive the debt? No, he didn't. He said, give me some more time, I'll pay it. But the king is moved with compassion, releases him, and forgives this debt. That is enormous. No doubt the people hearing this parable that Jesus is telling are overwhelmed. Wow, what an act of generosity. Later, the same man, after he was forgiven this great debt, he comes into contact with somebody that owes him a debt. Now, it's a small amount. The Bible tells us it's 100 denarii. Well, we don't use denarii. We use dollars and quarters and nickels and dimes. Excuse me. Beg your pardon. But this amount was not just small in comparison to the 10,000 talent debt, but it really wasn't a large, huge amount of money even in that day. It was enough, but it wasn't horribly bad. He grabs the man by the throat. Verse 28. Grabs him by the throat and said, pay me what you owe. He didn't have compassion on him. He didn't hear the man when the man asked him to give him a little more time. He didn't do that. When the man is asking for compassion and mercy and a little more time, he doesn't. He calls the law. Now, in today's world, if Casey owed Paul, using these two brothers here as an example, if Casey owed Paul $100 and doesn't pay him, Paul isn't going to call the cops on him because they're going to say that's none of our business, right? But that's a different era. A debt was handled by the law if you brought them into it. He brings the law in and has the guy thrown into prison for the 100 denarii. Now, some of the other folks there that knew about this forgiveness of the great debt, they tell the king. The word gets back to the king. What happened? And the king summons him. And the king tells him that he is wicked and he should have had compassion on this other guy that owed him, just like the king had toward him. And because he wasn't, the debt is reinstated and he is thrown into prison. And listen to the wording here. Ordered to be tortured until the debt is paid. Well, the debt's not going to be paid. He isn't making any money in the jailhouse. That means he's there for life. He's done for. And we can assume his wife and kids have been sold and everything else too. We can just assume the rest. Wow. Well, what do we learn from this parable? What is Jesus actually saying in this parable? keep in mind, this is right after Peter says, how many times am I supposed to forgive this guy? 7? 70 times 7. Now, you don't have to get out your multiplication tables and figure out how much that is. I think it's 490 times or something like that. But that's not what he means. Jesus isn't saying, count them up, boys. You get to 490, and after that, hold a grudge. That's not at all. The illustration is continuously. But what is he really saying here? The king in this parable, it's an allegory, okay? King is like, we see God. In this story, the king is the supreme authority. God is our supreme authority. The person with the debt, well, that's all of us. And who do we owe? We really owe the Lord. That's who we owe. But when we couldn't pay the debt and asked for mercy and compassion, he gave it. And he forgave us. The thing we couldn't pay. There was a song, I don't know who wrote it, but I remember my Uncle Howard Tiller introduced it to the church when I was growing up. He paid a debt he did not owe. I owed a debt I could not pay. I needed someone to wash my sins away. That's the Lord. He paid the debt we could never pay. God, this is the lesson we're supposed to learn from this. God expects his children to show mercy. Because forgiveness is meant to be shared. Think about that for a minute. Forgiveness is meant to be shared. We are supposed to forgive. We're supposed to show compassion and mercy. We're supposed to not hold a grudge, not harbor ill feelings, etc. The person, I saw this a couple weeks ago. I wish I could remember who said it so I could give them credit in this quote. But this is a quote. I didn't come up with this. A person who does not forgive has forgotten how great a debt God has forgiven them. End quote. So sometimes we can harbor hard feelings. Now that is very human to do. Am I wrong about that? I don't think so. Sometimes we don't even realize it until we're faced with a situation, and then we realize we've got hard feelings against somebody. And that sometimes happens. You might be just going along and everything's great, and you don't think you've got any kind of harboring anything against anybody, and all of a sudden you're in the same proximity as someone, and suddenly you're like, oh man. That's your clue. You're holding a grudge. You haven't forgiven something. There's something there, and that's your clue to say, whoa, I need to let that go. I got to forgive. That's when you realize it. Because you could be just having a wonderful day, a wonderful month, a wonderful life. All of a sudden, there's that person. Oh, man. Or you're supposed to be somewhere. Oh, I don't want to go there. Well, why not? Well, maybe something happened to you years ago at that particular location. So you're going to hate the location? Are you crazy? That building didn't do anything to me. What if I harbored, I'm using my own self here today, the modern term is being transparent. I don't know what we used to call it, but we're telling on ourselves. What if I was harboring hard feelings for being laid off 16 years ago from the job I had at the time? Oh, I can tell you it hurt. It stung. It was ugly. It was a very, 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 very hard time for me. We ended up having to sell our house and move in with my parents. My two older kids were in high school, and my youngest was in second grade. It was really hard for me. But you know, the people responsible for selecting me to be included in that layoff, well, they did it for spite. So I didn't do anything wrong. In fact, I was doing quite well in the company, but they didn't like me. And they suddenly were in a position to do something, so they put my name on the list. Said that I had done something that I didn't do. I went and ended up in the HR with the meeting, and it came out it was somebody, I lived in Fort Worth, there was somebody here in Omaha that did something, and I said, so why am I responsible for that? They didn't work for me. Well, you should have stopped them. I'm in Fort Worth, I didn't even know what they were doing. And that's how my name got on the list. So, those people, though, they don't work at that same place anymore, and they haven't for almost as long as I haven't, because they were let go after me. It would be crazy for me to continue to harbor hard feelings against the folks that are there now that didn't have a thing to do with my being laid off 16 years ago. I'm emphasizing that because it's a time, it wasn't last week. It was a long time ago. It might seem logical to blame the place in general, but no, that's silly too. My feelings would be misplaced if I did that. Neither should I hold a grudge against those that put my name on that list. It was really hard for me for about a year or so to not pray against those people. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say I used to have some pretty good ones. Get them, Lord. Put them in the same spot as me. It was terrible. It's not funny, but I can kind of laugh at myself now because I was wrong in my mind and my attitude. But to hold feelings against them was wrong. I would have to let that go. And I have, thankfully. It took a while, I'll be honest about that. It took a while. But I don't hold a grudge against any of those people anymore. I got to the point where I was actually praying for them because I realized that they were going through what I was going through, because I found out they were. Oh man, they're having a rotten time. So I started praying the Lord help them and bless them. And then I found out one of the guys became a vice president of another company, and then all those feelings came back. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not there yet. God forgive him, because I was still looking for a job. But the Lord was able to help me through that. But you know why he did? Because he knew I needed to. He wants us to forgive. We have to share that forgiveness to others like he does for us. And how many times? Well, 70 times 7. God has forgiven us so much more. He wants us also to be merciful and forgive. Think of the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses as we what?
Forgive those who
Forgive those who trespass against us. So in that example, it's literally an outline for prayer. He says we're asking the Lord to, first of all, we give him honor. He's the Lord. Hallowed and holy be your name. Where is he? He's in heaven. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Let your kingdom come, your will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Then we can start bringing our request. Give us this day our daily bread. And then there's an and. Forgive us our trespass as we forgive. We've got to forgive. There's another place in the New Testament where Jesus said, if you don't forgive men their trespasses, your Father in heaven will forgive you yours. When I read that with understanding, because I've read it many times and probably just didn't catch it, one day it hit me and I was like, what? That was hard. Because I was like, whoa. And I thought, maybe I'm misunderstanding this. You dig deep on that one, you're going to come to the conclusion that just like this parable, the king forgave that man who didn't deserve it, and that man didn't forgive another person who needed a little more time. Note this, he wasn't required to forgive the man's money, the money he owed him, but he was supposed to show compassion. When the guy said, I need more time, he should have said, okay, have compassion. He didn't. He went all the way over here. The man is now in the jailhouse. What? We are supposed to forgive. We have to release hard feelings. We have to let them go. And when you're in a position where you suddenly realize you're feeling hostility or hard feelings against someone for something in the past, that is the blinking red light that says, ooh, I need to forgive. I still harbor those feelings. I've heard people say, well, I forgive them, but I'm never going to hang around them again. Well, okay, you don't have to if there's a personality conflict. I get that. But if you're saying, I'm not going to hang around them again because you can't stand them, you still haven't forgiven.
Forgive and forget. If you can't forget, you still haven't forgiven.
You haven't forgiven them. You've got to let it go. Now there is such a thing as personality clash. I mean, if you've lived more than 10 years of this life, you've recognized that. And there are people that you just don't mesh with. That's okay. You don't have to hang out with them. But if you're not hanging out with them because you can't stand them, and you just really want to tell them what, then you haven't forgiven them. You have to let it go. You have to let it go. So release those hard feelings and let them go in Jesus' name. Forgive. Because I'll tell you what, a little more transparency. Oftentimes in my morning, in my prayer time with the Lord, I will say, forgive me of, all my wrong, and help me to forgive because I want to be forgiven. I heard a minister one time, actually I read what he said. He said, I did. I heard him say it. Oh, if you have to say, help me to forgive because I want to be, then you're not forgiven. No, I'm actually genuinely saying, Lord, I need your help. Because it's very human to hold a grudge. It's very human to harbor hard feelings. It's very human to remember and say, I remember what you did. Okay? There was a really popular song about 1981-ish by a man named Phil Collins. And he said, and there's a line in the song that says, you could wipe off that grin. I know where you've been. It's all been a pack of lies. He's like, I know what you did. I was there. I saw what you did. And that's unforgiveness. That's unforgiveness. We don't want to emulate that. Someone did you wrong, and that does happen. Pray for them and ask the Lord to forgive them, but also ask Him to help you to forgive. Because that's a critical piece in our walk with God. He wants us to forgive. And when we don't, it's not good. Let's stand.